Really?
what the lag is.
Between you and
Yeah.
me, or between live and...
Yeah, there is. There is. I wonder if they're seeing me saying there's a lag. Probably.
That's all right.
This is good.
We'll figure it out. And if we don't, we don't.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see if anyone's here. Stream. Thanks. For viewers. Okay. All right. Well, I guess I'm just gonna. We are. All right. Good. That's in the live chat. Okay. All right. I'm just gonna assume that it's 6:01. This is officially starting. So, welcome everybody. Welcome to our very first live stream. So, I guess to get started, I kind of want to just talk quickly about, again, why are we doing this live stream? And the whole reason that I wanted to do this type of format is because I feel like the life science industry has quite a few challenges that it's trying to face. And they're not particularly easy ones, right? Like, we have to make extremely quality product every single time. And not only that, we have to try to make it at a cost that's affordable, which is a lot easier said than done, right? But I also feel really lucky because right now we have this really cool moment in time where we have free speech, we have the internet, we have crazy advancements in technology like cloud computing and AI that I think we can actually put a dent in some of these challenges, right? I genuinely think that when it comes to generics, we actually have a shot at making something local, hopefully, that is resilient against the supply chain. And even if it's not generic, I think we can actually find ways to overcome inefficiencies. And when I say inefficiencies, I mean things like losing a multi-million-dollar batch, because that cost has to be paid by somebody. Unfortunately, it's usually you and me, right? The patients when we're most vulnerable. And I say all this because I'm part of the 4.0 community, and it's really exciting. I get to see how in other industries they're making these giant strides and improving manufacturing. But within the life sciences, I feel like we are kind of lagging behind a little bit. And I think a large part of that kind of has to do with the whole NDA proprietary nature of our industry. Now, listen, if a company figures out something novel, I am totally for it. That's your intellectual property. You deserve that. But when we're talking about common things that can really improve all of manufacturing, like how do we make resilient architectures that have no data loss and are auditable and the FDA loves it? That's something that I think, as the quote goes, rising tide raises all ships. So my hope is that what we can do at Skellig is kind of be a catalyst for the industry. Hopefully we can attract others who share the same mission, share the same values, and by talking with each other, having these conversations out in public, in the open, we can hopefully build up that collective knowledge to hopefully move in the right direction, right? And to that point, that's why I'm so stoked that we have our very own Jennifer Jones here, joining me on the live stream today. So if you guys don't know her, she's actually the COO at Skellig. So Paul founded it, but I'd argue Jennifer is like the heart and soul keeping the company going, following actually all of the values and the mission, right? And I'm glad that she's here because she kind of has a different perspective. I'm just an engineer. My job is to try and just solve the problem in front of me, try and look up the technical challenge. But she's also thinking, well, how can we do Industry 4 while still making money, while still getting, food on people's plates? She's trying to help our company still be profitable and ethical. So that's a really interesting perspective. I'm super glad that she's here today. You want to say hello, Jennifer?
I muted because the side chat told me there was a bit of an echo. So if there's a way to fix it, we'll fix it. But I think it's funny that you introduce yourself as just an engineer, because Paul and I are just two people trying to make sure that you can do what you're doing, because it's so important. And I think it's so interesting that we have engineers who we trust, who we know them well. Some of them are friends, some of them are sometimes family, it's just, we trust you all to make the best choices about what you're doing and why you're doing it, and to be curious about if there's a better way to do it. And what's interesting about Skellig is we get to work with so many really cool and innovative and legacy clients and big name clients that are so exciting to be a part of. But then what's interesting is we get those questioning brains back at Skellig, you know, as a home base to say, I don't know if that was the best way to do that. There's probably a better way to do that. And it's people like you that are curious and that want to see something better happen in our space that make all of the, can we make money? Because it's so annoying. I don't like that we have to make money to do this, because there was also this point in time where Paul was trying to educate me on what 4.0, because we were very much a systems integrator who was living in 3.0, which is fine. That's where we are. We're where we were, you know. And I was like, sure, we can do that. It seems expensive, and it's a lot of risk. It's a lot of guessing on the right thing. So are you sure? Are you positive this is the way you think it's going to go? And it seemed like the best thing to do for the people that we have these commitments to, people that signed up to work with us. Like, I feel really committed to making sure that their take-home pay, their benefits, all of those things are good, and that they're good enough that they're even in this headspace where they can be curious. Because if you are like in survival mode as an engineer, how can you be expected to be curious about a new solution or be curious about like innovating anything different? You're just going to do your job and go home, and that's actually fine. So we were trying to experiment with like, what's it like to be a really supported engineer and do this innovation stuff? And all of that means that, you know, we do it, we do our best. But that's part of the charm, I think, at Skellig. We don't often send out shirts because we spent that money on 4.0 stuff. We spent that money on trying to make sure that our engineers got the training they need to keep up with the technology changing around them. And I think that was a better investment. But one day there will be shirts too. So like and subscribe.
I'm really looking forward to that. You know, that I love that response so much, because I hope people realize that there is a lot of effort that we have to do to actually show up to the clients, and it's not always the choice that just maximizes profits, right? It's a tough situation, but that's honestly why I love working with Jennifer Jones. I'm so glad you and Paul are leading this company, because it is a rare thing, I think, for systems integrators to first and foremost think, okay, what is actually best here, as opposed to, well, how do I just extract wealth, right? Cool. So, to that point, we have a question today. So, by the way, thank you everybody who submitted questions in the Google Forms. That was really awesome. Now, what's kind of cool, and I probably shouldn't be as excited as I am, but we didn't get a ton of responses, but I'm happy about it, because that means we get to take the time to just kind of go through each question like one by one. So we're probably going to talk, I plan mostly to talk about maybe one or possibly two questions tonight. We'll see how the time goes. So if your question didn't get answered, don't feel jaded. It just means that we are slotting that for a future week, and we're on our way to getting to it. So, well, I can share my screen. Hopefully you guys will see the window. Okay. So the question that we're trying to talk about tonight is, how do you avoid Pilot Purgatory with your 4.0 proof of concept? Now, I have seen proof of concepts that did get trapped and stuck, and I've also seen proof of concepts that have, like, over the years scaled into something just truly, like, impressive. Alas, because of NDAs, I can't get too much into detail. I really wish I could, because I'd love to sing the praises of the companies, but alas, that's where we're at. But when I think about why did those two things happen, I feel like there are kind of like two big reasons. So the first one is, when you're doing a proof of concept, hopefully you're starting small on the plant floor, right? But there's kind of a trap there, because when you're dealing with a small amount of data points, like, gosh, you can build almost anything that will work for 50 OPC tags, right? It's a whole different story when you're like, okay, that custom thing you built from scratch, does that scale now to like 5,000, 5 million data points, and who's going to maintain that code, and is it robust? So the first problem that you need to make sure to avoid this mess is make sure that you're doing your proof of concept in a scalable way. You should be thinking, how is what I'm building now going to handle when hopefully it's so amazing that we roll it out to the whole enterprise? And I feel like there is a second problem, and it has nothing to do with the technology, actually. It's more of, is your business culture one that is innovative? Because hopefully your proof of concept is solving some new problem, right? It's something new. But is your company the type that's ready to roll out innovation everywhere? And from what I've seen, this people problem is where we struggle the most. Because luckily, the people at Skellig, they're very smart. Like, I think we know how to build scalable solutions, but it's just a whole different conversation, a whole different problem to even get that to the table. I don't know, Jennifer, like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think I recorded a talk with Paul where we may or may not have got into it a little bit. But one of the things I'm really hopeful for the future is that when people retire out of these positions or advance forward, the people more familiar with the technology that are more equipped to address this step into those positions, because I do empathize with how fast everything's changing, and what is working might not be what's going to work forever. But I understand why risks, there's so many layers above them probably that determine what risks they're able to even take. So until you see a company, I think, through and through that's really focused on the efficiency of the technology and the automation and all of this, which is a huge ask to talk about, like an entire company being on the same page there, or at least equipped to address it or evaluate it really well. I think it's going to take a little bit of time, and it's going to take people who have kind of that dog in them to do it. And I mean, we have a lot of them. They're all around us. We work with tons of them. So it's very hope inspiring for the future, I guess. But I do think that it's a little bit of that. And well, yeah, I guess when they get in those jobs, I can't imagine what it's like to bring a solution like this to the table and say, like, can we try this after years of doing something a way that the FDA is good with and everyone else is good with, and it makes money and it makes the product and everything's safe. Like, it's really hard to suggest something. I think that, I don't know, I have lots of thoughts on it all the time, but those are the ones you'll have today, I guess.
Yeah, and it's funny because I feel like Skellig's kind of a case study of that in itself. Because you were saying earlier how you guys, when we were trying to pivot to 4.0, were also scared and doing the math of, like, can't we afford to train our engineers on a brand new skill set that no one has, and then go out there and hopefully do it, right?
But you know what? One of the things that Paul and I say to each other when we're trying to figure out problems at Skellig or issues that come up is, like, who's closest to the problem, who's closest to the plant floor, who's closest to the operator. Those are probably the decisions that I'm gonna back. And so for me personally, if you know me well enough, you know I shouldn't be answering any of these technical questions, which is, that's fine with me too. But it's just that, like, I knew that I didn't know enough to properly evaluate automation the way that Paul did. And so as a good partnership, I just trusted what he said, and I trusted that the engineers who were a part of it were incredibly motivated to prove it out with me and show me and sit down and have those kind of, like, really painstaking conversations so that I could understand it, because it did take a little bit of time and it took a lot of effort.
I love that answer so much, because I think you're spot on. When I first learned about, like, 4.0, I'm, like, very motivated by the technology. And so I, built these little proof of concepts and would, like, be in these meetings with people of management and say, hey, look at this cool thing. Isn't it amazing? And their eyes glaze over. And they're like, that's nice, Amy. We're going to go with the software we've used for the last 15 years. And I realized the hard way that you can't lead with the technology. That I totally went about it completely wrong. Like, you really should view it as it's all about the people. You're trying to solve the people because they're the ones with the problems. Technology is going to solve it. So the strategy that you need to do is kind of like what we did at Skellig, right? You're up at the top. Well, people who are closer to the technology took the time to lead with education, to show the value of how it can actually impact things that you care about when you're leading a company. And that's how you actually got the political capital, so to speak, to actually have something pan out.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's harder, it's easier said than done, right? Because when you're doing these proof of concepts, hopefully you're starting at the plant floor, right? But the people with all the political power are at the top of the company, and they don't really see that. And I think that when we saw Pilot Purgatory happening, it was because of the fact people at the top didn't know really cool stuff was happening. Especially because in a lot of sites, I feel like you have this just like institutionalized data silos, so to speak, where, yeah, you have, you know, your pilot plant over here, you have your lab space here, you have your MES team, and they don't talk to the automation team. There's just such communication silos, not even data silos, just like different organizational groups are not talking to each other. And so even if you pull off something, technology is like really incredible, if nobody else around you realizes that happened, well, you're not going to be able to scale it out anywhere. So I feel like that's probably one of the hardest things, because I feel like people kind of have to be clever to get some of this new stuff in. Like, they'll just say, oh, we're doing an alarms and events overhaul. Okay, great. Let me just use this thing called ignition. And that's how they get it in, and that's amazing, and I'm glad they do it. But there has to be the point where you say, this is a case study now. Like, once you pull it off, where you get everybody above you aware of what is right underneath their nose. Because otherwise, they might not recognize what you've accomplished, and then you're just kind of left behind with your one cool area of the plant, and then it just stops.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a long rant.
No, that's a good rant, because it's not even just in technology, and it's in all areas of your life. Is if someone comes to you and says, here, read from the same material that I'm reading from, let me educate you, you can take your time to read it and come back with questions, and that's probably the point of strength there, because you're taking out trust issues, you're taking out, you know, who knows what someone has to gain from it. Like, let's all read from the same data, let's read from the same book, you know, the same chapter, and let's have the questions and have the conversation. It takes longer, it's harder, especially I think one of the hardest things for me being the CEO of Skellig is, you know, I struggle to turn my computer on. There's an echo on this call, you know, and so for people like you and people in the MES sphere to sit down and actually like show me why and how, and tolerate the questions that I have without judgment, and you still value what I do bring to the company, but you know that it's not this, and you know that you know, we have to find a way to be on the same page, reading from the same material and understanding the same thing. But I'm going to understand it differently than you, but the onus is kind of a little on you to show me why I care and what this does, and how do I advocate with you, for you, if it matters, you know.
Absolutely. So this is fun. So we actually have some people in the chat who I know, so that's kind of cool. So I'm going to say hello. Hello, Jeff. Hello, Paul. Hello, other Paul. That's amazing.
2 Pauls? One.
So I don't know if any of you guys feel comfortable, but if anyone in the chat wants to like chime in on your thoughts, things you agree or disagree with, that'd be great. We could talk about that too. Or if you have any other questions, we can definitely jump into those as well.
I can't see the chat, so I'm flying blind.
Oh, really?
I'm flying blind, but I just imagine if there's something in there for me that you would let me know.
Yeah.
Doubt it, but...
I mean, we could jump to a technical question. I don't know if we have... I mean, we do have some time. I could do that if you want, but the only thing is, if I like having Jennifer here, I want to leverage having your expertise, because I feel like if I get into the weeds of Sparkplug,
I'm going to glaze over, and that's okay,
yeah.
and that's all right. I want you to have the joy of Sparkplug's all that you need, but I'm trying to think, one of the things that I think that you and I really align on is like getting engineers to actually feel supported and allowing for that space for creativity and like what that takes. And I don't know if you want to talk about what the magic ratio looks like for you or what the work-life balance looks like for you, but just know that that's something that we talk about a lot. We talk about, are these people happy, or do they like what they're doing? Do they make enough money to pay their mortgage and their car payment, and then have enough that they're not thinking about it the next month and worrying about moving, and can they stay in their region where they want to live? All those things are things that we talk about, and it's like, I know it's arduous, but it actually makes me really proud that I work with people that value that the same way I do, and I don't have to just be the one swinging for the fences about that. Like, to have that all the way through to finance and HR and the engineering managers is really special. So I know it's not perfect, and it can't be. Like, there's so many changing things that happen in people's lives, and you change to meet them, and there's an ebb and flow to it all. But I don't know, is there any Amy Williams experiences there that you think you could share?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Because the hard thing about like 4.0 is it is like constantly changing. I don't think anyone has ever climbed to the top of their technology knowledge and said, guys, I did it, I know everything, and then they just stop learning. No, I mean, if you actually want to be cutting edge, you kind of have to continuously have this desire to learn new things. And the problem is with learning in engineering, you pretty much learn by getting it wrong over and over again, figuring it out. And then once you understand it, you can turn around and bring it to the client, right? The thing is, that learning process, you can't do that if you're struggling. And I feel like we've all experienced that on a project where in the beginning, you know, you plan everything out, but then as those deadlines start approaching, what happens? It's always like, do whatever you need to do right now just to get it over the line. Doesn't matter if it's ideal, but if hopefully projects don't go that way. But as an engineer, sometimes you're in those situations where it's awkward and you're like, well, man, I guess that's going to be a punch list item. And if people are living that life, do I expect them in their free time to learn about MPTT? Absolutely not. No, they need to get their deliverables across the door because that's impacting product today. So the exciting thing about that, though, is I do believe that with technology, like if you see how efficient, how scalable some of these things can be, my hope is that rather than just like automate and remove jobs, companies will be ethical about it and say, okay, you're going to be more productive, and with the productivity time you have that you saved, we're going to invest in that for you to be innovative, for you to actually solve problems. We're going to be using technology to make you the employee of the future here, right? As opposed to just trying to get by day to day, doing the same old because it's what you know.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot to be even said about the 8-hour workday and if it's even relevant anymore. And my overarching thought is that I just want you to get what your team needs out of you done, you know, for the day, what you needed to do, what you committed to do. And if you take a walk and eat a long lunch and you're able to do stuff like that, you're just being a human that gets to participate in a community, which if you aren't doing that, you know, that's to me a problem. I don't think that we're meant to just be focused towards a job. We have so much more to offer, and I don't know, I don't want to get too social on the but it's just like you could add so much value not only to your client and your company, but to your community if you have flexibility that is given to you by efficient technology. And I think that would be a lovely future.
That's amazing. I agree. It's wonderful. Let's see. Oh gosh, we have a couple questions here in the comments, so thank you guys for questions. Let's see, Jennifer, do you have any? Oh, you can't see them, can you?
No, can you read them to me?
You want me to read all of them?
Nah, read one at a time.
Okay, so the first one, actually, it's similar. So Dylan and Paul kind of asked similar questions. They said that Pilot Purgatory can come as a result of a pilot that didn't solve the right problems for the right people. how does Skellig choose the right proof of concepts and pilot projects? So I think that's really true, and it's a really fun question actually, because we've been in a few meetings where people have said, like, AI. We have been given a bunch of money to do something with AI in 4.0. And it could be tempting at first to say, okay, let's make that work. But usually we reply with, well, it's the good old saying, first step is connect, collect your data. So that's usually where Skellig tries to start, because that's a pretty easy assessment to make. Because honestly, where the life science industry is, most of them are not connecting and collecting their data. They have lots of data silos. So typically that's step one. And what's also interesting is we've had some conversations about what to do with the MES systems, because in life sciences, MES systems are usually a lot of these kind of electronic workflows for the operators, and it gets very complicated, right? Because MES, let me rephrase. In traditional pharma sites, you have one monolithic MES system. So that one system is now going to do every single MES function you could possibly want. So our poor MES souls have this giant scope of work that can get dropped down upon them. So what really comes in clutch there is having the people that we do who understand how important it is to think bigger picture than just MES, because a common pitfall is that it becomes another big data silo and people just grind away trying to build all this stuff just so data can go into there and then stay. So usually what our MES people do is they try to think, okay, well, what's the use case that's going to benefit not just that work instruction process, but the actual entire batch process? How does that interface with automation? How are we getting our data out, and how are we getting that shared? And that kind of helps whittle away this giant laundry list of things that could fall underneath that one monolithic system. Yeah. Do you have anything to add with that, Jennifer? I don't know if you deal with that too much.
that one I'm going to leave mostly to you. But I will say a huge shout out to the MES people that are at Skellig. They're amazing. Amazing. They are inspiring. Every single one of them is doing their best, and I am really proud to have them. That's all I have to say about MES.
Let's see.
Give me another question. Not from Paul.
Not from Paul. Okay. Vast CNC says, hey y'all, what's Skellig's target market? I know it's in the life sciences, but what type of manufacturing do you focus on? That's a good question for you, Jennifer, because we're not exactly doing everything, right?
Right. I guess there's some easier answers here. One thing I'm really interested in is these therapies that seem like they are just not for the common people, but common people are afflicted with the things that need the therapies. So maybe that's a nice, easy way of explaining it, but probably not. Let me try again. I look at things that are like cures and that are so amazing, and we get the news articles pushed to us about how much great it'll be, and then all of a sudden it's oh, but it's $2 million. I'm interested in those. I'm interested in cell and gene therapies. I'm interested in everything that I think makes medicine actually accessible, because one thing that bothers me a ton, keeps me up at night often, is that there are these medical advancements and they are not for us. They are for people who can afford it, and until they are for everyone, they are for no one in my mind, unfortunately. So
yeah, and that's something interesting about Skellig, is that we really pick things that generally we think do good for people, right? So that is a lot of stuff like vaccines, a lot of things like gene therapies. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily, I'm not going to shame, I don't want to pick a fight, but there are other industries that aren't quite so positively net good for society, and we just don't help them. Yeah. Not that we don't help them, but we just choose not to target them, I should say. That's what we do. We target the things that definitely have the most tangible net benefit to the patient.
Yes. I don't think I have. I know that Paul O'Sullivan's probably screaming in the chat right now. He's saying something about CAR-T or this or that I'm missing, but I just can't grab the words. I don't know where they are, and I'm flying blind without the chat, so.
Oh, yeah. That's so funny.
Nah.
We could invite Paul on. Throw him in the Teams meeting.
He would really yap it up on here. Yeah, it's the vaccines, the gene therapies, enzyme replacement therapies, things that make life livable for people that are really afflicted with something that's probably not their fault, but it is, now their responsibility to try to find a way to pay for it, or our tax dollars' responsibility to find a way. And there just has to be a better way than the way the healthcare system's working right now.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yay. Dylan asked another question. Thanks, Dylan. Dylan's a really interesting person. He'd be fun to have come talk, even if he's not life sciences. But he asks you, Jennifer, what problems do you see from an operations perspective that could be solved by 4.0 technologies, but are often overlooked by engineers? That's a really good one. And then for me, he says, what technologies could be used to solve these? So, I kind of have an answer to your question too, actually. But...
I was hoping that you did, because Dylan, you might have overestimated me, and I apologize. And I look forward to answering a question that you have one day, but today might not be the day. But I will say, problems that I see that 4.0 can solve. Is that a good way to sum that up?
Sure, but they're getting overlooked by engineers.
I don't know if this is going to be a direct answer to that question, but something that I see, because I'm looking at retaining the incredible people that we hired. We put a lot of heart and soul into how we hire. We put a lot of actual care into how we hire. And once they're in the door, it's anything I can do to keep them with us, because that's what grows our strength and our capabilities. So something that scares me is putting them at a site that isn't interested in it at all. And the stagnation and the loss of it, they're like, I'm not really having that much fun. They're not letting me solve anything. They're not letting me try something new. And that kills me a little bit, because I can't fix it from my seat. I can't go and push the client to, we can try our best to, show them a new way or get a meeting on with the right people. But overwhelmingly, there's not a lot I can do unless we get some new client that I can move them to eventually, or try to train them up in the background and keep them engaged and stuff. But yeah, the stagnation scares me a little bit too, because I think that's also a really valid reason to make a job change. And then I get sad, because I really like every single person we hire. Mm-hmm. It's a curse and a blessing.
That is a really good point. So I will say I do appreciate what Skellig has done to try to mitigate that somewhat. And that's that, we have this core 4.0 group who's just kind of passionate about this. So in our free time, we built the virtual plant, so that way hopefully people who might be at a site where they're not getting exposed to anything different, because again, you have to pay the bills, but if they're interested, they can come to that resource. And for free, they can kind of jump ahead of the training and learn from all the stuff that we've learned the hard way, and then be more prepared to speak to it to the clients. Because I feel like every person I've met in life sciences, right, even if they aren't a 4.0 person, they still want to do the best. I honestly haven't met anybody who's evil and says, yeah, I totally want to just stay the way I am and not get better. I don't think that's what's happening. I'm much more convinced that's what's happening is it's, again, this fear of, well, I know that we survived the audit last year by doing exactly ABC. So we're going to just stick to ABC because it's what we know. So I feel like the best thing we could do for those engineers is equip them with the knowledge of, okay, yes, ABC kind of worked, but now there's this new thing that's actually way better, and it has been tried. But again, the NDAs do get in the way of that a little bit of saying the case studies, but, again, virtual plant. If we can equip people, I think, with knowledge, hopefully have conversations. This is our first live stream, so I didn't expect that many people, but I would love nothing more than some, not antagonist, but somebody who just thinks everything I say is wrong to just come talk to me so I can understand, why is that? What is it that you're scared of? What do we have to prove to you? to hopefully get things going in a better way,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. So we have some more questions. Okay, we have a follow-up from Vast CNC. He says, or they say, medicines, treatments, batch processing type operations then? Do you work with medical device manufacturers?
I don't. I could stand corrected, but I'm pretty sure that we don't. And it's not because we don't want to. It's just the sphere we exist in is where we've been able to grow. And I think every once in a while one comes around, but I'm not sure if anything ever materialized. There might be one that I can think of, but I don't know. I'm sorry. I have a bad answer to that.
I don't think I think we are open to working with device manufacturers, but our expertise is definitely like batch automation. That's what we do, for sure. Okay, Paul Liu says, how can we effectively engage with life science customers who haven't adopted Pharma 4.0 solutions yet, but clearly demonstrate a need for digital transformation? That's so funny because like they're the ones who need it the most, right? The people who aren't at all looking in this direction.
I think your original answer of education is a huge part of it. Is like, how do you pitch to a client in a value add only way? Because that is the Skellig way that I really, really like when it comes to business development, which is like, unless we are adding value, I do not want to be there. I do not want to waste your money, so if we are not the right fit for you, I want to move on because I want you to have the money to fix it in some way. So I think a lot of that looks like unpaid work in a way, where you're just taking the time to educate before you even get to a place where you're talking about a proposal of work, and seeing if you're a fit for each other and seeing if they are interested in coming along, engaging, if they're serious about it or if they understand, and if not, what more, I guess. I don't know. That's a tricky one, and it's kind of been the trickiest thing about the last couple of years, I'd say. It's a great question.
It is a really good question. I'd say the only silver lining is that I know for a fact that their licensing costs are just so astronomical that they did not have the money to do everything that they wanted to do. I know for a fact they have a wish list of like items if they only could have gotten to that's floating around somewhere. So I think if the people who are on site can just get a hold of that list and say, okay, listen, let's not waste more money trying to do this the expensive way. I'm going to do these for you, and something that might even be like for a proof of concept. You might even get away with just trials of things. You don't even need to pay any money. If you can do it, get your foot in the door that way to add value, I think that would be probably the best thing for it. Because the money is, unfortunately, honestly, I think the main reason why they're not going this way. They have this perception that I think the claims are impossible, just because what they know, these problems are impossible to solve.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So if we have, I'm so conflicted over if I want to go into that other question or not. Yeah, sure thing, Paul. If we have max 20 minutes, or let me grab something really quick. Do you see let me know if you see anything. I'm going to try to get the other question list and grab one from there. 1 second. Gotta love when things are live.
It's my first live. I feel like it's going well.
Yeah, me too.
I can't see anyone or the chat, so it's just like talking to Amy, which is honestly, what a damn delight.
Thank you, Jen. Yeah. Okay. So, this is a fun question. Are there regulatory or compliance issues we need to be aware of when adopting Industry 4 technologies? What do you think, Jennifer?
I mean, yeah. You gotta be aware of them all the time. They're the most important thing. Yeah, sorry, it's true for me. That's all I got on that one. What do you got, Amy?
Okay. I would say yes, absolutely. But I'm actually happy about this answer because I think we can actually be more compliant with 4.0 things. Because honestly, like a lot of sites that I have been at, and this is the recent history, are still very much using paper. And paper is like can get destroyed by a cup of coffee.
It's paper.
And now it's not Alcoa, right? The
Mm-hmm.
FDA does not like that your original record got disintegrated by your latte. So I'm excited because I think if you can actually do use some of these 4.0 technologies, you can actually like digitize your paper. And I'm not just saying, okay, recreate your paper form in Excel. That to me is not proper digitization. I'm saying like really think about what information was supposed to be on that paper. Try and model that into some kind of like data. If it was ignition, for example, you could use ignition to make a paper on glass form that is actually modeling the information back in with the UDT, right? And now that data that would have been just on a regular paper form could then be published to a broker. It could be accessible by everyone. And now that form could be scaled out really well if you just want to add some more attributes. And it opens up a lot of doors for filling out these like future test protocols, these future change controls that, again, a lot of sites are doing these things by hand. Because like, I guess I don't want to name the software, but I like the software actually. It's a software that you use. Everybody uses it for making your test protocols. And it's cool because it's digital. But again, you just manually type in everything. And inevitably, when you're doing like these big change controls, it tries to go forward. Your CSV, your CQV, your QA group's like, okay, you made a typo here. This is unclear. This doesn't match the wording in our other change control. It's getting kicked back. I mean, making simple formula updates, it's like a week's ordeal, just in the back and forth of trying to route this thing for approval, having it getting rejected. It has nothing to do at all with the actual like technology of the change or the actual code, right? It's just how is it phrased, because it's such a manual, subjective thing. And I feel like with technology, we have a big opportunity here to properly standardize how we do change controls and make them so much more accurate and not error prone. So that way we're actually having discussions about the merit of the contents of the protocol as opposed to, well, grammatically that doesn't make sense. Well, that should have been in third person, but you first person, you know?
Yeah, and that's all money. Like every single person's time that touched that document to talk about punctuation, $100, $100, $200, $400. Like someone with a C in my title, like that should alert me that there's, efficiency to be gained if I see that they were editing back and forth for a week about tone or punctuation or, this looks unclear. That's all time. It's all people's time and energy too. And so it goes all the way back to the first part of the talk where we were talking about you are more than, a computer. You're a whole person. And I don't think that's an incredibly efficient way to use these engineering brains. I don't. I think there's better ways to use them.
100%. Let's see. So there's another question. What do you think will shape the next phase of Industry 4? Any specific technologies, trends, culture, etc.?
I think it's going to be Amy Williams, and no, I think it's going to take time. I do. Unfortunately, I know that's a really disappointing answer, but I think it's going to take time, and it's going to take people who are invested in a better future than the one they're living in, people who want to do it better than the way they did it, and be humble about the inefficiencies that they might have been a huge part of designing, and who cares? Are you willing to do better, or do you just want to dig your heels in deeper, I guess?
Yeah, I'm like really optimistic about AI for documentation, and that sounds so boring, but it's honestly disgusting how much money I've gotten paid to manually update Excel sheets.
Don't tell me that.
It's really sad. I look back in time and I'm like, oh no, do I feel good about that? No, but it had to be done because at the time there was no ChatGPT or AI or anything. But I think we have finally, my hope is that that's the direction these companies are going to start going. They're going to say, okay, listen, if you can get all of your data formatted, maybe in a JSON format, maybe it's stored in MongoDB, maybe we can automate some of this real-time documentation. You don't have to spend the time like making the mistakes or redlining, you know? So that's where I'm hoping the life science industry goes, because again, all of that inefficiency, I think everybody's on board. Nobody wants to do it. Nobody is excited to do the documentation part of the project. So if we could cut that down, that would be amazing, because now that's time people can spend doing actual engineering, adding another feature, you know, and hopefully getting more for less, as they always say.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I think I would just love to see a world where the engineers feel like they are using their talents, their trades, their gifts, things that, you know, they worked really hard for. They got these really difficult degrees to obtain for that, you know, this is, I don't want you guys doing that, but I also know that it's, you will do what's right. And if that is what needed to get done, then you'll do it. And I'm sorry that it's documentation. I guess that's the way I feel about it from my seat, is like, I'm sorry when those things happen, because I know that you are more innovative and more curious and more, but also I know that that's just a reality of life right now for so many people, is the documentation must be done, and it must be done in the way that it's done.
Yep. You know, that actually kind of reminded me of something too. When we think about the future, and you mentioned degree, right? Like, do you think that we're headed towards a world where you still need to have these traditional, like, 4-year degrees, like, to do what we do? Or what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, this might upset people, and means nothing against the people who worked very hard for their degrees, but I actually hope to see it open up in a way that is more accessible to people who cannot do that and did not have the luxury or the support or the guidance of how to get that funding to go to college. I'd love to see them be able to make a difference in our sphere, because I also think that we are very closed and very homogenous group of people at times. I think we're very white, we're very male, and that's a detriment to our innovation and our success. And I know that part of that is the gate of college, and especially an engineering degree, which you can't do if you're experiencing, you know, housing instability. You can't do things like this. It's impossible. You know, we're asking people to do impossible things to even have a seat at our table. So I'd love to see it change, but I know that might be controversial. Let me know in the chat. Or don't, or keep it to yourself.
Well, yeah, I mean, so my take is, like, gosh, personally, school was very hard. I'm very proud of my chemical engineering degree. I know everyone who has one is very smart. That's amazing. But I also think, boy, did I need to learn Laplace transforms? No, I really didn't. So I'm excited because at least, like, Jeff Rankinen is, like, my only hope for college, honestly, because he's out there actually changing his curriculum to be something that maps onto reality. And of course, he's only doing that, and it's rare, he's only doing that because he's going out of his way to be part of this, like, 4.0 community and learn things continuously, I'm sure, on his own time. Gosh, and I do hope that we see more of that, because I can just imagine, like, how productive could I have been if I spent 4 years not having to, like, make money, right? If I just spent 4 years learning what is the best technology, doing my own tests, getting into the weeds. I feel like, man, I could have been so impactful when I initially graduated, but unfortunately I was regulated to documentation because, gosh, that's all I knew.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I also feel like when you come out of college in America with an engineering degree, you don't know what to expect. You don't know how to slot into a company. You're gonna have to learn it all. So hopefully, like, a lot of the things that you learn prepare you to know how to learn next. But, like, I would be curious to know if there was more of a movement by these colleges to actually think about where their students will land and what will set them up for success. I'd love to see see that shift a little bit. We've hired juniors straight out of college before, and they came ready to learn with great attitudes, and that was the most important thing about them to me. It wasn't anything that probably happened in that 4 years, because they were about to learn something completely different, because they were local to me, and this industry is not really popular where I am right now. So they probably didn't even have it on their radar that they would be doing something like this. So they were learning kind of day one stuff of this is this and this is that, and this is how here's our training, I guess. But it's hard. You can't even hardly train people. So thank you, Jeff. Keep trying.
Yeah, we're rooting for you.
We're rooting for you.
Cool. All right, let's see. We are kind of wrapping up here, which is exciting. So, okay, I'll give, we have a question that I intentionally didn't want to answer today, but I'll address it. So somebody did ask, like, okay, what's an EBR look like in the 4.0 world versus the 3? And I'll just throw this teaser out there. I got so excited about that, and as we mentioned earlier, we have just brilliant MES people that's a question that we're currently trying to make an actual video on to address. So we're not going to really answer it right now. That might be sad, but don't be too sad, because I promise we are going to actually answer it properly, hopefully in the next few weeks or so. Let's see. And I guess there's some questions I don't want to answer, because again, in my mind, I'm like, no, we're setting up for that in the next coming weeks. So I guess, does chat have anything we want to talk about? Otherwise, we could probably wrap it up.
Did the chat have a good Tuesday? Where's the chat? What are y'all up to? Where are you calling from?
Yeah. I guess they did have a good Tuesday. I'll just assume that. Let's see.
Silence is usually good.
Yeah, Dylan's commenting. Oh, that's exciting. All right. Okay. Thank you, Dylan. He said, great live stream. I love the message. I don't have another question, but I wanted to say you're not alone. It's not just life sciences that is still fighting the uphill battle to get to Industry 4. Most people I meet in any industry feel that they are falling behind. I also really appreciate the reminder that digital transformation is not about technology. It is refreshing to hear you guys talk about it, how it's about and for people. That's wonderful. Thank you, Dylan.
Thank you, Dylan.
Yeah, you should. If you haven't met Dylan, you should meet him. He was at ICC last year. I don't know if you guys crossed.
I only tailgated ICC.
Okay. Yeah. He's very, very good. Yeah, I do feel like the industries that have, like, there's a company that I am actually very impressed with, who I feel like really is actually making wonderful strides, and it has been a ongoing process. Like, their initial proof of concept of trying something new, which I think it's safe to say was on QTT, wasn't something that happened like overnight. It wasn't like this really cool, within 1 week they went from all just discrete connections to this beautiful hub and spoke UNS thing. Like, that's not how it happened. It was much more of the leadership at the top was having the conversations of, well, it seems like this actually might be a better way to do something. We might actually be able to get data to the MES with way less validation. Yeah, let's give this a go. And then they started kind of rolling things out over like years, you know? And now they're doing some really cool things, which I guess I can't say because of NDAs, but hopefully once their project is done, I would love to do some kind of like case study or collaboration. So that would be my one ask of the life science industry. Please celebrate your victories, because precedent is powerful. Like bragging, I don't think it's a bad thing. It really helps us when we can point to somebody and say, look, they did it, the FDA was happy, we can do it too. That'd be my one request.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we have such a quiet community, and it's because it's by design, but I also don't know if that is the best thing to help people at the end of it all, you know? I understand.
I don't think so. No, not at all. Not one bit. And like, again, I understand why we have a right to intellectual property. I think for sure, if you put in the work to solve a hard new problem, you have every right to make your money on it. But I also think at the same time, there are some base things that we're struggling with, and we're reinventing the wheel over and over again. And it's like, oh gosh, I don't want to rethink for the 100th time, how do I define this bioreactor? Surely there's an open standard somewhere of somebody who did this that we can just say that's the way. But when I've looked for it, and if anyone has it, please send me it, I'll start using it. But when I look for these things, they're always like behind paywalls, or there's always some catch that like, yeah, this will work only in our software. So it's not truly this like, I want to see more of an open crowdfunding, crowdsourced answer to some of these common problems. Because honestly, I don't like resolving the same thing I don't want to solve the same question over and over again my whole career.
Yeah, and there's things that just add time to the process, which we know time is money, and is something like cleaning. How proprietary is that? And so there's just questions like that live in my head where I'm like, we're wasting everyone's time, we're wasting everyone's money, we're wasting the company's money, we're wasting the taxpayers' money, we're wasting the consumer, which is the patient often, we're wasting things. So I'd love to see a little bit more, but I understand why it's tough, and I think that there'll be ways that we can figure out to do this, but it was by design, so obviously it's going to be an uphill climb to do anything different.
Well, so maybe this is my naivety here, but I feel like there's money on the table that the industry isn't capturing. Like, straight up, the biological industry pays my bills. I don't want to see them go away. I don't want to see them lose money. I want to see them make more money, right? But I also see, like, again, we do have these drug shortages, so if we could figure out ways to be more efficient, to be profitable, making this stuff locally, that could grow the industry, right? You could just have your little local manufacturing shop down the road for your town, for your hospital, but we don't, because it is so expensive that we have to rely on just a few sites. And I'd love to see that change. And I do think we could, if we could figure out a way to, again, answer some of these tough challenges that we're all facing. That'd be wonderful.
Yeah.
And yeah. Well, I think that kind of wraps it up. It's right up on the hour. So
I had a great time.
Thank you guys so much for watching our very first live stream. Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jennifer, for coming. I really appreciate the
Thank you
company.
for having
Made me
me.
less scared. A friendly face. And thank you, chat, for showing up. I do appreciate the conversation. That was really helpful. And yeah, until next time. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.